Hello everyone, welcome to Software Testing Help. My name is Sharmila. In this video, we will be discussing about assertions in TestNG and how do we implement them. So when I say assertions, basically it means to verify something, right? It helps us to verify the conditions of your test case and decide whether your particular test case has passed or failed. So that is how you tell whether a test case is passed or failed. Now let me explain to you with an example. So here you can see four test cases I have scripted for Amazon application, Amazon.in application, and each test case has its description, expected result, actual result, and test case status. Now here the test case status, how do you decide whether a particular test case is a pass or failure? How do you decide that? Only when your expected and your actual result are the same, you say that the test case is pass. If they differ, you tell that your test case is failing, right? So how do you compare? How do you make this comparison of expected and actual result? How do you do that? We do that comparison of your expected and actual result using assertions. So that is how assertions are used. That is where assertions come into play. Okay. Now you should also know that assert is basically a class in TestNG. So it is a class. You can assert is a class. You just use this class, and inside you can call its method and use according to your test case. So let me explain you about the types of assert, and then we'll start with the implementation process. So there are two types of assert. One is the hard assert, another one is the soft assert. So when talking about hard assertion, in case when your assertion is failing, your execution will stop and it will not continue to further steps. Whereas in soft assertion, even if there is a failure in your assertion or validation, your execution will continue to the next sequence of steps. So here it will just stop or hold the execution and throw an exception, whereas in soft assertion it continues and throws the exception at the end of execution. Okay, so that your program doesn't get interrupted in between, your entire program gets executed. Whereas in hard assertion, as and when it sees a failure or encounters a failure, it throws an exception and holds the execution. Now let us see it with examples. Now let's go with the first test case, which says verify title of Amazon. So here we have an expected output, that is it should have a title online shopping for electronics, etc. So now this assertion we will do it using hard assertion technique, and we'll see how it works. Okay. So we are going to automate the first test case. So now I'm just creating a TestNG class here. I've named it as learn assertions. Now that I've created a class, I've just initiate my driver, and then close the driver, and then I'll put my main logic. Okay. So here you can see in at before test, I've initiated my Chrome driver, and in at after test, I have closed my driver. So in at test, so this is where I'm going to put my logic for the test case. I'm going to verify the title over here in this method. So let me write the test steps for that. Now here I've written my test steps. I've opened my URL and I've got the title, and I'm storing it in a variable called actual title, and then the expected title I'm storing it in another string variable. Next, what I need to do is I need to compare these two. I need to compare the actual title and the expected title. So these two I need to compare. So that comparison I'm going to do it using hard assertion. So as I told, assert is a class in TestNG. So using that class, I'm going to invoke its methods. So you can see we have various methods, but one thing is common. The thing is the actual data type and the expected data type and the parameters. So that data value is common, but only the data type inside is going to differ. It might be a boolean, it might be a character, it might be a string. But in our case, we are going to compare two strings. So I will call assert equals with string data type. Okay. So here in the actual and expected, I will pass the actual title and the expected title. So now the actual title I've passed here and the expected title I've passed in the parameters. So when I call this function assert, it will directly or automatically assert both the actual title. It will compare and assert whether it is a pass or failure. Okay, so let me run this and show it to you. So before that I will add another statement after this assertion. I just added a statement called assert past. So let me run this and show it to you. So run as TestNG. Driver is invoking my browser. Browser is getting opened. Amazon.in should get invoked now, and it should assert for the title now. Okay, now it has executed, and in the console you can see that. Let me show you the console. Okay, you can see that the actual title is online shopping and my expected title is also the same, and hence my assert got passed here, and it continued to my next statement wherein I printed a string called assert passed. Right now, the same thing, I'm going to make a failure for this. I'm just taking out the word shopping here and I'm trying to run it. So now it will encounter a failure, right? So we'll see what happens when it is encountering a failure. So run as testng. Yeah, the browser is invoked. Amazon.in is opened. It should assert. Yeah, and you see, I got an error. I got an error over here. So let us go through the error now. Okay, it says expected online shop online but found online shopping. So this word was missing and hence the assertion failed. So here my assertion failed, and after that, what happened? It halted the execution. It threw an exception over here and it halted the execution. After that, it didn't proceed to the next step. It didn't proceed to this step. You can see in the console, I don't have it printed. I don't have this printed. So which means my assertion failed my execution and halted it over there itself. After that, it did continue. So that is what happens in hard assertion. As and when it encounters a failure, it just halts the execution and throws an exception. Now the same thing, let's see how it is getting handled in a soft assertion. Now, as I told, soft assertion, we have a class called soft assert. So for that class, I've created an object. So using this object, I will access the methods inside it. Now I'm just going to put this object creation at class level so that I can use it everywhere. So now using the object soft assert, I will access its methods. So methods similar to our hard assert, I will use soft assert dot assert equals. So in this case, I'm going to compare two strings. So assert equals of two string actual and expected. So here I will pass my actual title and here the expected title. So now you can see here, I've passed my actual title and my expected title. So what happens in soft assert is that when this line is reached, it will check whether it has passed or failed. In case it is passed, it will keep in its mind. In case it is failed, it will again keep in its mind. It will not show it to the user whether it is passed or failed. Only when I ask the assertion to show it to the console, it will display the exception. So how does it throw an exception in soft assert? So you have a command called assert all. So this command assert all actually throws all the exceptions caught. Okay, so whenever it is performing an assertion, it will just read the exception and keep, and whenever I call the method called assert all, only then it throws the exception. So which means it continues to the next sequence of statements and it throws the exception only after all the statements are executed. Since I've called this assert all after my driver.close, which means after my browser is getting closed, only then after then I'm calling the assert all method, which means only after my browser is closed the exceptions will be thrown. So the other sequence of statements will continue without any interruption. So let me run this now and show it to you. So this is a failure case wherein the expected title will not match with the actual title, and we'll see how the failure is getting handled in soft assertion. The browser is invoked, Amazon.in is getting opened. It should assert and continue. Okay, you see here, it showed me a failure. Okay, but what happened? It says expected online shop but found online shopping. Okay, through a failure, but it continued through the next step. So this is where assertion happened. It failed here, but it didn't throw the exception. It continued to the next step, assert passed. You can see assert passed, the statement got printed, and then it threw the exception only when I called the method assert all, only after my driver only when my browser got closed it threw the exception. So this is how soft assertion works, wherein um, your execution doesn't halt in between, it just continues until the end, and after all the execution process is complete you can just call the assert all method to throw all the exception that was caught while performing this assert action. Okay, so now you might ask me the question when to use hard assertion, when to use soft assertion. Okay, now I'm coming to that. Now, take this fourth test case wherein it says verify successful login. Okay, so in order to verify successful login, we have four validations. Let me read it. First one says user should be directed to home page. Second one, sign in button should not be present. And then sign out link should be available. Shipping address should be displayed in top left corner. I will show this in real time now in the screen and then we'll discuss. Okay, this is how it appears to you after login. So you will have you're having a sign out link at the bottom, you're not having any sign in button, and then you're having a shipping address in the top left corner. So out of these assertions, okay, I tell that only the first three assertions are mandatory. Only the first three assertions decide whether the user has made a successful login. The fourth assertion doesn't decide this successful login criteria. It is just a part of validation because some user might have a shipping address already registered, some might not have a shipping address already registered. So in that case, for those users, it might fail, this validation might fail, so they might not have a shipping address, so that doesn't mean they haven't made a successful login. Okay, so this doesn't directly make a test case pass or fail. Only the first three I consider it as major or mandatory validation that has to be checked in order to make this test case pass or fail. So the first validation I just make it an optional one. So what I do is for the fourth one, I apply a soft assertion, and for the first three one, I apply hard assertion. So that is how I distinguish when to use soft assertion and when to use hard assertion. Whenever you think a particular validation of your test case makes a direct impact on deciding your test case status, then you use hard assertion. Whenever you think that validation doesn't make an impact, doesn't make a major impact in deciding your test case status, in that case you can use soft assertion. Okay, so now I think you got an idea of assertions and its types, and the next video will be discussing about the methods of assertions and how do we implement them, the different methods with real-time examples. Thank you for attending this session. Thank you.